Kamusta? My name is Jay Aruga. I'm a member of the Conservatives of the Philippines and I host a podcast called The Jay Aruga Show. A few days ago, nagulat tayo dahil nakalusot ang divorce bill sa House Committee on Population and Family Relations at pag-uusapan na ito sa Congress. That is why we are here. Kami sa Conservatives of the Philippines, we thought of collaborating with different groups kasama yung Catholic Faith Defenders sa Antipolo and to give you this series to help you guys give logical arguments against divorce when you talk to your family, friends, and in social media. Dahil ngayon, mas kailangang mag-ingay tayo. Kailangan nating ipadinig ang boses natin para malaman ng mga politicians na itong pro-divorce stance, kung magiging pro-divorce sila, bukod sa mali sila, maraming hindi boboto sa kanila. As I'm thinking kung sino ang i-interviewin ko sa podcast on the subject of divorce, may nagsuggest sa akin about this book called Them Before Us. It is written by Katy Faust, and I am fortunate enough to talk to Katy in my podcast. Lahat ng mga discussions ko dito sa talk na ito ay galing lang sa libro niya. I suggest that you listen to my interview with her sa the Jay Aruga Show podcast in Apple or Spotify. Then I also suggest that you read her book. What is this book about? Simple lang, sinasabi ni Katy na kailangan unahin natin ang rights ng mga child pagdating sa lahat ng mga decisions nating mga adults. Kung same-sex couple kayo, isipin niyo muna ang batang magiging produkto ng in vitro fertilization na sapilitan niyong ihiwalay sa kanyang biological parent para lang ma-serve ang desires niyo na magkaanak. Kung heterosexual couple naman kayo at nasa isang unhappy marriage ka, isipin niyo muna ang magiging epekto nito sa anak niyo bago niyo i-pursue na maghiwalay kayong dalawa. I don't want to take credit for Katy's work. I didn't do an extensive research on the subject. So, think of this presentation as my book report on Them Before Us. I talked to Katy and pumayag naman siya na i-present ko sa inyo ito. Una, let's answer the question, do children have rights to their parents? Yan ang tanong eh. Naturally, ang parents may rights sa mga anak nila. Kaya kung may kikidnap sa anak nyo, that's against your right to your child. Pero may right bang mga anak sa magulang nila? Let's say may mag-parent nap naman. Parang hindi nangyayari yun, di ba? Pero imaginein mo, ang parent napper, isang magandang babae na nang akit kay daddy. O machong lalaki na nakipag-flirt kay mommy. So, mukhang mas malapit sa katotohanan, di ba? Before we answer if children have rights to their parents, let's define rights. There are two kinds of rights. Natural right and legal rights. So our good, trusty, reliable source of information, Wikipedia, summarizes the differences of the two rights accurately. According to Wikipedia, natural rights are those that are not dependent on the laws or custom of any particular culture or government. Legal rights, however, are those bestowed onto a system by a given legal system. So natural rights shouldn't contradict other people's natural rights. Halimbawa, may natural right to life. It shouldn't contradict your natural right to life. Kapag nagko-contradict na yung, kunwari, yung isang right ng group of people, malamang sa malamang hindi natural right yon. Malamang legal right lang yon. Halimbawa, the legal right to own a slave. This is a legal right because it contradicts one's natural right to liberty. And dito pa lang marami ng mako-cross out na so-called rights na hinihingi ng leftist friends natin. Like the right to healthcare, right to abort a baby, right for a transgender to enter the bathroom they wish. Now, how do we know if something is a natural right? Una, a natural right is pre-government. Ibig sabihin nito, kahit walang government, nandyan ang unalienable right na yan. The right to life, the right to speak, the right to free thought, they exist kahit nasa isang isolated island kayong magbabarkada. In fact, one function of government is to protect these rights. Number two, no one has to provide a natural right. Walang naghukay ng napakalalim na butas sa earth para ma-excavate at i-deliver sa iyo ang right to free speech mo. However, para makakuha ka ng right to a healthcare, someone has to endure 12 years of medical school, residency, establish a practice, magtayo ng ospital para maihatid sa iyo ang right to a free healthcare. Number three, a natural right is distributed equally. Ibig sabihin, no one is born with a lesser or greater quantity of these rights. Pwede mong sabihin you have the right to a housing pero may bahay na mas malaki kaysa sa iba. Ang right to education may ibang hanggang high school lang and may iba nakakaabot sa PhD. Don't get me wrong. We have the right to pursue these commodities. Pero when I mean that natural right is distributed equally, ang halimbawa nito, the right to life. All of us equally have one right to life. Ngayon, balik tayo sa tanong. Papasok ba ang children's right to a mother and a father sa tatlong criteria na ito ng natural rights? Una, pre-government ba ang children's rights? Children's relationship to their parents existed pre-government. As long as human beings exist, the children-parent relationship existed. Number two, may kailangan bang maghatid sa mga bata ng rights nila to their mom and dad? Wala. No one needs to provide the children their biological parents. Kasi kung nag-i-exist yung bata, ibig lang sabihin, nag-i-exist din ang mother and father niya. And number three, equally distributed ba ang right na ito? Of course, everyone has the same quantity of parents. Dalawa lang, no more, no less. A mom and a dad. Aside from that, kahit hindi tayo dumaan sa napakahabang thought exercise na ito, pwede pa rin nating masabi na may right ang mga bata sa magulang nila sa ganitong paraan. Kapag nanganak si Mrs. sa maternity clinic, may right ang parents na umuwi from that clinic with their child, not just any child, but their own child. So, why can't that right go both ways? Ang isang batang kapapanganak, may right din siya na maalagaan ng parents niya. So, ganun yun. Dapat both ways yung right. Despite our differences with the left, at the heart of it all, I think they mean well. At minsan when we ask our left-leaning friends which major social issue, gaya ng homelessness, human trafficking, overcrowded prisons, suicide, teen pregnancy, or high school dropout rate ang dapat na unahin nilang isolve, they find it difficult to choose just one. But you know what? We can tell our left-leaning friends that there is an all-of-the-above option that would increase the number of high-achieving students, cut the pipeline to prostitution, and lower the number of calls sa suicide hotline. All of these societal problems are rooted to the breakdown of the family. According to the statistics gathered by the Fatherless Foundation, 1 out of 3 children grows up without their biological father in their home. 71% of fatherless children drop out of high school. Fatherless children are 5 times more likely to commit suicide, 32 times more likely to run away, 10 times more likely to abuse a chemical substance, 20 times more likely to end up in prison. And this is why our left-leaning friends should be concerned of children's rights to their mom and dad. If they even care about social justice, dapat ay samahan nila tayo sa laban na ito. Why then should conservatives care about children's right to their mom and dad? Conservatives who believe that government should be small or limited in power should think more about defending the family because big marriages is necessary to small government. Ika nga ni David Upham. In 2008, the Institute for American Values conducted the only study to date intended to estimate the cost of family breakdown to the taxpayers. Children living apart from one or both parents cost the US $102 billion a year, which is enough to power the economies of Nicaragua, Namibia, Mozambique, Madagascar, Mongolia, Macedonia, Rwanda, the Congo, Malawi, Botswana, and Afghanistan for a year. This is because of the welfare benefits, such as housing assistance, educational assistance, transportation, food stamps, childcare reimbursement, Medicaid benefits are higher with more broken families than when there are more intact families. Aside from that, sobrang laki din ng ginagastos ng government sa education dahil sa additional guidance counselors and teachers sa mga students na hindi maka-keep up. Tumataas din ang gastos sa prisons dahil sa mas dumadami ang nakakulong. Alam niyo ba na may isang institution na natatag simulat sa pool pa lang para maibsan sana lahat ng problemang gustong solusyonan ng left and right, liberals and conservatives, Democrats and Republicans, and that is called marriage. Marriage is the original safe space for children. Marriage will give the very nutrients na need ng mga bata to strive better. A mother, a father, and stability. Traditional marriage will give the right gender balance in a kid's life. Pero bakit naisip ng mga sinaunang tao ang marriage? Of course, as Catholics and Christians, alam nating God instituted marriage. Pero let's say we'll take a secular approach. Not saying that the religious approach doesn't matter. In fact, if you take all the religions in the world, Muslim, Christian, Hindu, Buddhism, ano ang meron sila in common? Do they all believe on the same nature of God? Do they believe unanimously where the soul goes when they die? No. But all the religions of the world believe unanimously that marriage is a union between a man and a woman for the good of the spouses and for the children they might produce one day. And that's saying something. Pero practically speaking, alam nyo ba kung bakit kinakasal tayo? Marriage is the most pro-woman, pro-children institution. Mothers are the most involved in a child's life from the time they had sex to the 9 months of pregnancy until she is breastfeeding and caring for the child. Ang mga men, tayong mga lalaki, we're only involved in the process for the whole 5 minutes of sex. Tapos wala na. Pero syempre may iba magsasabi na nakakatagal kami more than 5 minutes. Pero marriage makes sure that the father will stay. Hindi siya tatakbo after that 5 minutes of pleasure. Yun ang practical reason bakit may marriage. To attach the kids to their mothers and fathers. And yes, we know that there are marriages that don't bear kids. Pero hindi naman lahat ng marriage ay bibiyayaan man ng anak. Lahat naman ng anak, siguradong may nanay at tatay. Garantisado yan. And alam niyo ba kung bakit sa lahat ng adult relationships, interested ang state i-recognize ang marriage. Sa marriage lang interested ang state, ha? Hindi naman nagkikip ang state ng record ng mga BFFs, di ba? Bakit interested ang state sa marriage? Hindi dahil sa love. Love is not a legal term to begin with. Pakialam ba ng state kung gaano mo kamahal ang asawa mo? Wala namang barangay na na nagha-house to house para i-measure kung may feelings ka pa rin ng love sa misis mo, di ba? Ang interest ng state sa marriage is because of the kids. Marriage create new citizens of the state, and it is in the best interest of the state that these new citizens are cared for. Dahil ang future ng state ay nakasalalay sa new citizens na ito. So balik tayo sa issue ng divorce. Dito pa lang makikita natin na marriage is not created para sa public declaration ng feelings nyo sa isa't isa. It's really not meant for living happily ever after, gaya ng false advertisement ng mga fairy tales. It is meant for the kids, para sa security ng mga bata, na hindi sila iiwan ng adults kahit na may irreconcilable differences ang mag-asawa o unhappy sila sa isa't isa. They need to man up or woman up para sa kids. And for me, this is the problem our society is facing right now. Ang maling understanding of marriage. Now, we talked about marriage. The next question is, does biology matter? Kasi if we say that the primary purpose of marriage is to attach kids to their parents, what's wrong with divorcing and finding a replacement parent, di ba? Someone better? Maghanap kayo ng someone better than the previous one? Kung may conflict na ang relationship, bakit hindi itigil ang lahat at palitan na siya? Child psychologist Pat Fagan shared an insight he gained from his decade-long family practice. Ayon sa kanya, kapag ang anak daw ay nakikita nila ang nanay at tatay nila na nagmamahalan, nafe-feel din nila na minamahal sila ng magulang nila indirectly. Hindi daw ito nararamdaman ng kids, yung same kilig, kung nakita nila ang dad nila na nagnakaw ng halik sa stepmom, gaya ng kapag nakita nilang nagnakaw ng halik ang biological dad nila sa biological mom. So, naranasan niyo ba ito? Kapag niyayakap ng tatay mo ang nanay mo, parang ang sweet, di ba? Parang kinikilig din kayo. The reason na ganito sa step-parent kasi is because kids feel that they must compete with this new love interest. And sometimes, kapag naghiwalay ang magulang, ang naiuuwing boyfriend ni mommy ay yung taong mas may greatest danger of abuse and neglect sa mga bata. Alam niyo ba na a growing number of children in the US live with an unrelated adult? According to the website Smart Step Families, by age 15, 29% of US children experience 2 or more mother partnerships. 40% of children are born out of wedlock. 40% of married couples with children are step couples. And approximately 1/3 of all weddings in America today form step families. Ganyan na ngayon ka-normalized ang divorce at single parents sa US. Also, did you know that girls who grow up without their biological father begin to menstruate a year earlier than their peers living with their biological father? And sadly, this is not a good thing because early puberty has been linked to a variety of negative biological, psychological, and social outcomes, which include substance abuse, a variety of mood disorders, etc. Sabi nila, this is because of the proximity to unrelated men. Yung pheromones galing sa mga lalaking ito ang nagtitrigger ng early reproductive development ng mga young girls. Kaya, a father's absence is also linked to earlier sexual exploration ng mga girls, and that early menstruation results in more teenage pregnancies. 7 times the national average, to be precise. Sabi nila, divorce is a women's rights issue. They haven't seen the danger it posed on young girls. But this is not to say that abusive biological parents and saintly step-parents don't exist. They do, but sadly, they're statistical outliers. And of course, adoption is also part of this conversation. Definitely, in adoption, hindi biological parents ang magiging parents ng adopted child. But when it comes to adoption, the kids should be the client at hindi ang couples na naghahanap ng anak. It's already a tragedy that the child lost his or her biological parents. The goal of the adoption agency is to find a suitable home for their client, which is the child. Kaya dapat sangkatutak na background checks ang ginagawa para sa bagong parents ng batang ito. Are you familiar with the term Cinderella effect? Si Cinderella ay binigyan ni fairy godmother ng magical slippers, gown, tsaka carriage from a pumpkin. Tapos may mga daga na naging tao. And in the end, she lived happily ever after with Prince Charming. So ang saya, di ba? Pero in truth, hindi yan ang meaning ng Cinderella effect. Ito ang tunay na meaning ng Cinderella effect. For many children, Cinderella isn't a fairy tale. It's their biography. Hindi ko sinasabing lahat ng step-parents ay evil. Pero whenever abuse and neglect is involved, asahan mong yung unrelated adult sa bahay ang sus. Ayon sa isang sociologist na nagangalang Bradford Wilcox, one of the most dangerous places for a child in America to find himself in is a home that includes an unrelated male boyfriend, especially when that boyfriend is left to care for a child by himself. And nung nag-guest si Katy Faust sa podcast ko, sabi niya, do a search sa keyword na mother's boyfriend. It's page after page of abuse and neglect of children under the hands of a mom's new boyfriend. Why is this so? The moment na maghiwalay si mommy at daddy, kung hot mama ang nanay nyo, from that moment on, every boy na papasok sa pinto ng bahay nyo is only there for your mother's behind. Akala nyo papasok yun para ang pinakapakay niya ay gusto niya lang maging the greatest dad of all time sa mga anak nyo? Hindi. Wala nang lalaking papasok sa mga bahay na yan na ang buhay ng mga anak ang iintindihin nila. Ang pinaka-protective sa mga anak is none other than the biological father. I would like you guys to ponder upon this graph. This is from the 4th National Incidence Study of Child Abuse and Neglect by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services noong 2010. Married biological parents, makikita nyo, 0.5 cases out of 8,000 ang sex abuse. For single parents with a partner, the incidence goes up to 10 out of 1,000. Physical abuse, 2 for biological parents, single parents with a partner, 20 out of 1,000. Other married parents pertain to either adoptive parents or step-parents. A 2011 Pew Research study confirmed that through no fault of their own, step-parents aren't as emotionally tied to their partner's children as their own offspring. Ganun din sa stepchildren, they have the same feeling of disconnectedness. When parents are asked kung may obligasyon ba sila sa biological child nila, 78 said yes. Pero kung tinanong sila kung may obligasyon sila sa stepchild nila, 62% lang ang nagsabi ng yes. Mas malaki ang gap nung ang mga bata naman ang tinanong. Nung tinanong ang kids kung may obligasyon ba sila sa biological parents nila, 85% said yes. And sa step-parents, only 56 said yes. So na-overwhelmed na ba kayo sa lahat ng stats na pinapakita ko so far? I tell you guys, the studies that says that broken families lead to bad effects on children and eventually the overall society far outweighs any study na nagsasabing ibigay na lang natin sa mga bata ang burden para sumaya si daddy at mommy. So, teka, lagi nating tinitira si stepdad or live-in boyfriend ni mommy. What about stepmoms? Kung ganun lang, edi ibigay na lang natin ang custody ng mga bata sa biological dad at siya na lang maghanap ng stepmom ng mga kids. Pero according to Princeton economist Ann Case and Christina Paxson, children living with both biological parents, reportedly 61% of kids had a medical checkup within the previous year. With a stepmother, ang number dropped to 46%. With biological parents, 74% wear seatbelts. With stepmother only, 52% wear seatbelts. Hindi applicable sa bansa natin ito dahil 0% sa atin ang nagpapa-seatbelt sa mga anak natin. For families with biological mom, the child went to college for a year on average, while under the stepmom, the child did not attend college at all on average. Now we talk about the theme of the webinar, which is divorce. Ang mga kano, hindi nila makakalimutan ang September 11, which is, coincidentally, ito yung exact date ngayon na pinipresent ko ang webinar na ito. Alam niyo kung ano yung significance ng September 11? Para sa mga kano, exactly 20 years ago, ito yung time na may dalawang eroplanong nag-crash because of a terrorist attack sa World Trade Center sa New York. It is a very traumatic day for America. Yung makita mo ang mga tao in business suits na tumatalon sa building, yung madaming police at firemen na tumutulong sumagip pero namatay, yung gumuho yung dalawang buildings. Para sa maraming bata sa US, the day na nag-announce na magdi-divorce na ang mga magulang nila, yun ang September 11 nila. One moment, they are safe and secure. The next, everything they thought that was permanent came crashing down. Sociologists Paul Amato and Alan Booth conducted numerous studies on divorce and arrived at the conclusion that 1/3 of divorce is a product of high conflict marriage. But the children who experienced most stress from a divorce came from the 2/3 of those low conflict marriages. I'm not saying na if a marriage is high conflict and the kids are in danger or one spouse is in danger, wala tayong gagawin. In fact, most of the time, separating from that dangerous person, that mentally deranged person, could be the lesser of two evils. And if anything, I would support easing up the annulment process for these who are clearly crazy. And the good thing kung dadaanin sa annulment is that this psychological issue will really be put on record. Unlike sa kung divorce natin dadaanin, especially kung no-fault divorce ito, itong baliw na tao na ito, na nananakit ng anak at asawa, maghahanap lang ito ng bagong aasawahin, naaanakan, nasasaktan, at kapag nagkahiwalay sila sa second marriage niya, maghahanap lang siya ng next victim. Pero kung hindi kayo baliw na mag-asawa at mahilig kayong makipagsigawan sa isa't isa, kayo ang highest offender who don't put them, the children, before us, adults. They say when a child lost a parent from tragedy, the world mourns with them. But when a child lost a parent through divorce, they mourn alone. And this is true because most children of divorced parents, takot silang ilabas ang tunay na saloobin nila for fear na kung sabihin nila ang nararamdaman nila, baka masaktan ang parents nila who chose what would make them happy. Kaya kinikimkim na lang nila ang sakit na nadadama nila mula sa pagkabata. For the rest of this presentation, I'll do away with the stats and data. Let me share to you the stories of children who are now adults who carry the burden of parents who divorced in a low conflict situation. This is from Jennifer Johnson. I have a lot of experience with divorce, far too much to ask of any one person in my opinion. My parents divorced when I was 3 and went back to on subsequent marriages. Divorces, different children, a lot of back and forth between two homes, and a lot of chaos. By the time I was about 22, I had experienced 3 divorces: my own parents' divorce and my dad's 2 subsequent divorces. I am divorced as an adult, and there is quite a bit of divorce in the rest of my family. Laura told a story of her losing the relationship with her biological father. My father backed down and agreed to a no-fault divorce. My mom kept the house. Her boyfriend moved in with her and married her. I was supposed to spend every other week with my father, but I ended up seeing him much less more often because I couldn't get to school easily from his place. Gradually, my father was edged out of my life. I saw him on weekends or had dinner with him on weeknights, and that was it. What happened to Laura is a statistical reality. Malaki ang chance talaga na mawala ang contact mo in most cases sa father mo. According to the website Meripedia, nearly 50% of children in one study reported not seeing their non-resident father in the past year. Yung mga nakakita sa father naman nila in the past year, they did so for a special visit, not as part of a regular routine. According to Lay Ann, I lost myself in every effort to appease each side of the family. Shuffling alone between 2 separate lives meant that I was on the fringe of each family, never an insider. The people I loved most were never in the same room together, and many of them barely even knew each other existed. I missed out on events and celebrations because I would have to spend time with my other family. Because each of her parents are now married and have their new families, Lei Ann now feels like the outsider of both families, unlike her step siblings from each family. At kung magka-kids siya on her own, si Lei Ann, ang usual na kwento ay mas papaboran ni lolo't lola ang mga apo nila sa mga anak nila sa new families. Kasi may tendency na mas i-please ng parents niya ang bagong asawa. Dito sa next story, medyo nalungkot ako nung nabasa ko. It kinda drives home ang hirap na dinadanas ng batang nag-divorce ang magulang. Let me read it. What I remember most is the stress of daily packing, meticulously thinking everything through as I move back and forth between 2 worlds. I remember painstakingly planning what things to take, to leave, to wash, to find. I recall preparing my homework assignments at the one house that had the computer well in advance of the due date, hoping that the assignment wouldn't change afterwards, as I have no ability to revise it. No child should experience this. May nagsasabi nga na dapat ang batas sa pagdidivorce ay ang bata ang manatili sa bahay at ang parents, sila yung magsasalitang umalis ng bahay kung hindi sila makatiis sa isa't isa. One study shows the devastating and long-lasting toll of divorce on children. They obtain less education, experience more unemployment, and more likely to divorce themselves. I'll stop here dahil kulang ang nakalaang oras para ipakita ko sa inyo ang mountains of researches on the negative effects on divorce on children. There are researches that say there's a risk of recurring adult depression and increased likelihood that children may develop bipolar disorder. There are researches that say divorce increase suicide attempts. Another one that says a childhood trauma, divorce included, can lead to lifelong chronic illness. Another one says magsasuffer ang academics. These are just a few. Kinapos lang ako ng space sa slide kaya hindi ko nalagay lahat ng screenshots. Now for that 1 million peso question. Would you rather I stay in an unhappy marriage or get a divorce and be happy? Okay, sorry. Hindi pa rin tayo tapos sa studies. Here's a study called Does Divorce Make People Happy? It says that 2 out of 3 unhappy married adults who avoided divorce or separation ended up happily married 5 years later. In contrast, happily married adults who divorced or separated were no happier on average than unhappily married adults who stayed married. Here's another study from UK's Marriage Foundation. It states that the majority of couples who are unhappy when their first child is born are happy 10 years after if they stay together. 27% of unhappy parents who stay together end up extremely happy. Sabi ni Harry Benson, research director ng Marriage Foundation, contrary to popular belief, staying in an unhappy marriage could be the best thing you ever do. Ang gusto ko lang sabihin ay sobrang overprotective natin sa mga bata, lalo na nitong pandemic. Alam nyo ba na ang number of children 17 below na namatay dahil sa COVID-19, alam nyo ba kung gaano karami? 30 out of 1 million. Ayon sa Forbes website. Mababa ito compared sa 70 plus years old na ang mga namatay ay 54,000 out of 1 million due to COVID-19. And yet, sobrang protective natin para sa mga anak natin. Ayaw nating lumabas sila ng bahay, nag-online schools lang sila, kailangan naka-mask sila, naka-face shield palagi. Pero pagdating dito sa divorce, na napakataas ng lahat ng stats na nagsasabing malalagay sa alanganin or sa disadvantage ang education nila, may chance na makulong sila, depression, suicide in the future, bundok-bundok na research to support this, parang hindi tayo kasing protective sa kanila pagdating sa divorce. Bakit ganon? No one is saying that marriage is a walk in a park. I used to have this us before them attitude. I was in a band before. Ang lifestyle ko noon is laging madaling araw na ako umuwi ng bahay. Tapos dumating sa point na nag-aaway kami ni Mrs. kasi I'm chasing this rock and roll dream. Unti-unti, na-realize ko na may mga bagay ka palang kailangan i-sacrifice para sa stability ng pamilya mo. Ang dating kasayahan ko na tumugtog sa banda, kailangan nito muna mag-take ng backseat para mas mabigay ko yung oras ko sa mga anak ko, mas maalagaan ko sila, mas maturuan ko sila. I need to put them before me. Children's needs before my adult desires. Hindi ang children ang magte-take ng backseat against my rock and roll dream. Ito lang ang message na gusto kong i-drive home. In every decision that you will undertake in your life, kung may asawa at anak ka na, start asking, am I putting them before us? Yung office mate mong masarap kausap, tapos unti-unting nade-develop na yung feelings nyo sa isa't isa, bago mo ipagpatuloy ang posibleng relationship na ito, tanungin mo sa sarili mo, will I be putting my children's needs here? O inuuna ko lang ang sarili kong desire? Divorce is like this. Para niyong sinasabi sa mga bata na, kids, hindi namin kaya ang hard work na required para sa marriage. Masyadong mabigat na tong krus na pinapasan namin. Eto, kayo na ang magbuhat ng krus para sa aming mga magulang. We have to be honest with one another and ourselves about the lifelong negative impact of divorce on children. A committed them before us approach means adults in troubled relationships do the hard things necessary to repair the marriage by seeking professional help or simply by choosing family over self. Hindi ko ipopromote ang podcast ko sa talk na ito. What I would like to promote is this book where I got all this information from. Hanapin niyo yung Them Before Us sa Kindle, written by Katy Faust and Stacy Manning. So, this is Jay Aruga. At the end of the day, it will be night. And thank you for listening. Goodbye.